Good afternoon, everybody. Dr. Tim Conway here with another Dyslexia Success Story. And for those of you who are new to our group, I'm a neuropsychologist published in neuroimaging, neurorehabilitation, neurodevelopmental disorders, dyslexia, and a wide range of skills that help us understand the brain, how the brain works, and what we can do about it. And we're pleased to have a past client, Jean-Luc, who's joining us from the Caribbean, from Trinidad and Tobago, basically just having an informal conversation about concepts of dyslexia, concepts of dyscalculia, math skills, reading skills, spelling skills, but really talk about what the brain's capable of doing. Can you change those skills? Because the common belief is once the skills are set, they're set. And some people actually are telling folks with dyslexia, your brain's hardwired, which is just puzzling. Because think about that. If you can learn better art skills and you're a better artist and you have dyslexia, you can learn better race car driving skills and you're a race car driver with dyslexia, why would your brain not be able to also change the reading skills or the spelling skills? It's the same brain, has the same potential to wire and to learn. So with that introduction, let me say welcome to Jean-Luc. How are you, my friend?
Hey, Tim. How are you going? It's been a while.
Doing great. Yeah, it's been several years. I look back on the records. Yeah, look back on the records. It was 2015, Jean-Luc, when we first brought you on board to work on some skills. And it was 2017, some 7 years ago, you suffered through all that work at the Morris Center. And then you off to university, got your degree. And once you got started, I think you're on fire. Then you go on and do the master's degree. And now you've been out of university for how many years now?
About 3 years now.
All right. And so then you're 100% in the business world, putting all these skills to good use.
Yes, absolutely. For the last, I'd say actually before I finished university, I actually probably started. But yes, for the last 3 years, I've been fully involved.
Fantastic. So we set kind of just a basic agenda, which is kind of say, let's kind of give the historical account and like, what were your earliest recollections, your earliest memories of? Was it reading difficulty you remember first? Was it more like reading made no sense? And so you read and reread, but you can't remember. There's a comprehension side of dyslexia, but there's also a reading side of dyslexia. And there's also spelling. Which of those do you recall the most?
Honestly, if I'm being honest, what I really recall first was being in class with people my own age and getting report cards back, or maybe sitting in class and certain questions being asked by other students and me not necessarily understanding what they're asking or not understanding what's going on in the class. And to me, it's like, okay, well, I normally hang out with these guys on a regular basis and we understand everything when we're hanging out, but why can't I understand what they're understanding in class? Okay. And then the spelling started to pop up more than anything. I realized spelling was a big issue for me. Math, reading wasn't too bad. I kind of picked that up pretty young, but I started to see the issues with it as I moved on, definitely in the reading, writing, and in the math.
Got it. So comprehension first, spelling second, and then the reading and the spelling also then kind of affecting the math. What about the writing? Because as you get through your school, there's more and more writing skills required, more and more writing that you have to do, which includes using the spelling skills as well. Do you remember writing was easy, or was writing also a struggle in writing?
Well, surprisingly, writing wasn't too bad because I had a good imagination. So when it came to creative writing, it was quite easy for me. I mean, the spelling wasn't always there. Most of the time, majority of the spelling was wrong. And I kind of knew that a lot of the time as well. But I also felt that I couldn't ask questions. Okay. I felt that it would have been wrong for me to ask questions because things that people found so simple to me seemed so hard. So it was kind of like, okay, well, do I ask the questions and seem like I don't know what's going on in class and seem like I'm dumber than everybody else? Or you know what I mean? Or do I ask the question, or do I just sit there? Do I just try and follow on, try and catch on later on? Which it never really worked out. I never really picked up what my teachers were trying to teach me until later on, until I finished the Morris Center.
And what you knew and what your parents knew was it wasn't IQ. You're plenty intelligent. You have plenty of smarts. But the challenge was it just wasn't coming as easily to understand and remember and show people how much you knew in terms of the content. A typical presentation would be you'd be really good about talking about the stuff that you thought about a lot, that you were interested in and you knew really well. but you'd have a harder time with stuff that was, you know, the social studies lesson, you know, the history chapter, the science textbook, because that's stuff that's not stuff you talk about and think about every day. It's stuff that you're then having to try to learn and pull together more quickly on your own, and you have to retrieve the content.
No, I was very much a visual learner. And as you said, I mean, when we got to talk through certain things in class or talk amongst my peers, it was very easy for me to understand. The moment I had to retain the information, it got very difficult. Retention was very hard for me. And I actually didn't realize that until much later on, that retention was actually an issue for me. I didn't even realize that I could not retain information, or I didn't necessarily know how to learn.
Right, right. And it's a interesting concept of what you just said there, like know how to learn. Because part of what you did with the nowprograms.com group online, or the Morris Center in Trinidad and Tobago in the Caribbean, which is a transdisciplinary healthcare team, is we didn't teach you strategy. We didn't teach you mnemonics. We didn't teach you, hey, here's a way to memorize stuff. It wasn't about working around the learning difficulty. It was about making that weaker skill and making it strong. And so our expertise is how the brain processes information. So for the viewers to understand, let me say, you first did some work on the phonological system, which is more left hemisphere. It's more auditory memory. Can you hold on to the words? Can you remember the words? Can you think of the words? But that doesn't drive retention or comprehension. That just drives initial information. Later, we then worked on the right hemisphere, which is more mental movie making skill. Can you make a movie from what you're listening to? Can you make a movie from what you're reading? And it probably seemed just completely bizarre in the beginning. But then as we worked on it, you started to see that movie making became easier. And so it really was changing the how, but not from strategies, but just changing how the brain was processing so you could more easily make movies.
No, absolutely. Because even now, it's not like I make movies in my head all the time, but I know it's being done in the background.
Yes.
And even back then, as you said, I mean, when we were having the conversations about making the movies and doing these different things and creating the images, I mean, I was in my teens. So one piece of advice I'll also kind of try and give is, I mean, when you're at a young age, it's very easy for you to go and get involved. And your parents have put you into that program and you to go through the entire program. But when you're a teenager or in between university, you're at that age where you're kind of on your own path. You're trying to figure out your own way. The last thing you want to do is be surrounded by a bunch of kids doing this program. And then when you're an adult, it's completely different because you may know you have this issue and you just want to resolve it at that point because you know it's holding you back from being able to do certain things. So I would say that in between that age, between your teens, like I'll say 15 to about 18, it's difficult to do. But once you get there, you realize how beneficial it really is. But you have to get through it.
Right. And what we have to do on our end, whether it's the nowprograms.com or morriscenter.com clinic, we have to help the student of whatever age, because we work with kids as young as 3, 4, and 5 on some early skills, up to teenagers, up to 20-year-olds, 30, 40, 50. Jean-Luc, our oldest student in the clinic, 74 years old. And
wow.
Take your experience as a teen, early 20s, and you be surrounded by kids. Come in at age 70, and you're thinking, okay, you know, I'm doing what the children are doing, and anxiety goes back up again because you start remembering how a struggle it was in school and how unpleasant it was. But he powered through because he wanted to change the skills. And so once we help the student understand what we're doing and why we're doing it, and you begin to see the skills getting stronger, then we usually get a little bit more buy-in. Then we get a little bit more motivation because, hey, it's starting to work. Hey, these skills are starting to change. So
absolutely.
Tell me your initial thoughts. Do you remember what it was like initially when you went to Morris Center and how you felt about that? Kind of what you just said was there was more younger kids than you. That's a little embarrassing for most adults and teens.
Yeah, well, we first started off online.
Yes.
And I actually started with you, Tim, for a few classes, and then I moved on to the rest of the team. For me, it was quite difficult at first, trying to put the time aside as well as really focus when doing the online courses.
Right.
When it came to being in Trinidad, as you said, it was being around the children, which was like, okay, well, am I back in preschool? What am I doing around these kids? But as you start to work through it and you start to actually see like what happens in your day-to-day life, and you start to see things start to change and how you communicate with people or how you process information. And it doesn't happen immediately, but you slowly start to see it change.
Yeah.
I would say overall the experience, it was a great experience to be there. It's just that feeling is always in the back of your head because of that age group. It's just like, okay, well, am I really supposed to be here, or is something really wrong with me?
Right.
And that's what dyslexia kind of does to you. I mean, when I grew up being misdiagnosed probably 2-3 times.
Right.
Firstly, in Trinidad, I was misdiagnosed. And then when I went to boarding school, I was slightly misdiagnosed, but they didn't know all of the issues that I had. And then when you went boarding school too, it was kind of seen like, okay, well, if you have learning disabilities, then you're different to everybody else.
Right.
And they actually separated classes with people with learning disabilities. And then, I mean, they gave things like extra time and readers and writers and scribes for people who would need that for exams. But the image it gave you was, okay, well, this person is not as smart as me or as smart as everybody else in the class. And then when everybody's in class A, class B, class C, class D, and class E, and you're in class E, it's like, okay, well, with all your other friends, you're not really at the same level as them. And you kind of get, there's a little bit of bullying that takes place. So when you come into the Morris Center at that age, that teenage age, and you're with all the kids, those things kind of pop back up into your head. Are people going to think that I'm back at this level?
Yeah. And you're still struggling. You haven't progressed, even though you're older. You still have...
You're still in the same boat. Yeah.
Yeah. And so over time, what do you think gave you more belief that skills were going to change? Because that's always a big obstacle. Is we've had many years of school, someone trying to help, and didn't really help much. And you begin to see again and again, these people try to help, but it doesn't help much. Until you get to Morris Center and Now Company, then the skills start to change. Do you have any memories or recollection of, okay, hey, this imagery stuff starting to work? Because we do things to try to make you recognize it. Here's what we do. We'll have you make a movie. We'll wait 3 days, ask you to bring it back. And you start to realize, hey, I could do that. And then we might wait 10, 15 days, ask you to retrieve it. And you're like, it's there again. You know, and we do different movies and different content and different subjects. We're trying to help give you the experiential piece of that right hemisphere is capable of making new wiring. That new wiring can build a new processing. And that new processing could be your brain is now making movies more easily, more efficiently, and you can retrieve them and retain the content and the information.
I would say it was when I really went back to university. So I started my university career in New York at Wagner College. And I was there for about 2 years. And for the majority of the time, I just did not want to be there. And it wasn't because of the school. It wasn't really because of anything else. Weather, it wasn't any of those things. I grew up in England from 13 in boarding school. So I was accustomed to the cold weather and harsh weather. It was purely because I just did not want to go to class. I didn't want to go to majority of my class because I didn't understand. I didn't want to do my homework because I didn't understand. I didn't want to do any of these things. So when I came home in between Wagner and the Morris Center and then going back to university, it's only when I reached back to university in England at Regent's University and I went through my first year. Well, within the first few weeks, I realized that I had gotten the skills that I wanted or the skills that I needed. And I was actually thinking, reading, writing, doing math, everything at the level that I needed to be able to do. So be at the same level as everybody else in the class. And then things just started to flow. I mean, after the second year or so, I saw myself stepping up and I was pushing myself to be leaders of groups when we had group projects. I would actually go out my way to now ask teachers questions when before I would never even ask a question because now I was confident that I was asking the right question because I knew the answer I really wanted to get to. So that's when I really realized that Morris Center really worked for me. When I got back into that, I mean, I saw it in my day-to-day life and my personal life and with my family and these kind of things. But when I really got into, let's just say, that would have been a work environment for me because I would have been in university and not working. So back in that work environment is where I really saw it kind of taking off.
Gotcha. And that gives you then that real experiential knowledge of what's happening, where your skills are at, you know, what's progressing. And
because you've seen it at 2 levels.
Right.
You've seen it at 2 universities.
And because what happens many times is people are like, okay, yeah, this worked there. It worked at that clinic with those people with their materials. But what about here? You know, what about university with textbooks and actual college level content? And so that makes complete sense that it was when you really got to put the test back to the harder environment and you're on your own. We weren't helping you. We're not doing any lessons with you. You're solo, you're working out. And what many students find out too is many times early on, if you have a comprehension side of dyslexia, you don't even read the textbooks because you realize it doesn't matter. I don't retain it. So there's no point. But now, since the brain's making movies and you can hold on to the words to make the movies, convert the movies back into words to explain to somebody else, what did you find about your ability to, or willingness to actually do the readings? Because university has a lot of reading.
No, it definitely did change. My retention of information was, to me, had become unbelievable. I mean, I felt like as if I was an elephant. I felt I didn't forget much, especially when it came to numbers. When I would be sitting down in class and then randomly out of the back of my head, somebody would be asking, well, what was this from this part? And I would just blurt out the number. But I read 15 numbers in one paragraph. It's like, okay, well, you really are retaining the information if you're remembering exactly where it came from. And that's when I kind of realized, okay, well, you're making those images in the back of your head and they're going somewhere. You just don't know where they're going.
Right. That's it. It's all there. It's working together. And how about the other struggles you talked about before? How about the spelling? Is it improving? Still improving? It was stronger? What was your experience with changes? Because many people think it's genetic. You either got the spelling gene or you didn't get the spelling gene. If you didn't get it, nobody can help you get it. What do you think?
It's definitely gotten better. I still struggle with it.
Yeah.
But as you said, the gene, I would have to say I might have the gene because me and my father, we can't spell to save our lives. So, but I mean, it's definitely gotten much better because for me, it's now where I'm saying I can't spell, it's much lengthier words and much more difficult words. I'm talking very large words and difficult words. Before it would have been much simpler things. I mean, just understanding what to put or what
like though versus through. Wait, which one is that? Which one has the R? You know, things like that.
But those things have passed. And now even when you might, I mean, not saying that sometimes I don't make a mistake or sometimes I have to think back. You do, but you catch yourself and then you understand, okay, well, okay, this is where this goes because it goes with this. Right. And you start to put things together instead of just trying to guess.
Yes. And that's what should happen over time because from the brain science perspective, spelling is like 100 times more complicated than for the brain to do reading. Reading, you look at the stuff visually, you sound it out, you put the sounds together, you get your mouth to say it, and you read pusillanimous, a big SAT word that means cowardly. You know, we always joke around and say, in The Wizard of Oz, there was a cowardly lion, but they could have called it the pusillanimous lion because that means cowardly too. But you got to be able to sound words out. That's a critical skill. But to spell it, you got to hold the word in the head and retrieve it. If the word is pusillanimous. You got to say each of the sounds. You got to think of the letters that make the sounds. You got to execute the motor movements of the hand and the eye together to produce each letter in the right direction with the right shape. So it's like 100 times more complicated to learn spelling. Plus, even more so when we're talking about words that are not phonetic, you cannot sound them out. So like to spell yacht, you know, then you have to remember, it's A-C-H-T. But if you sound it out, you go yachita, and you got the wrong word. So we know that to really get it to work, you've got to have that other system, which is more visual memory, which takes more practice and more skill and then more exposure over time. And what you should learn is, and experience is, the words you're using every day in business become the ones that are much easier to spell because you're getting a lot more practice with them, a lot more frequency of practice. The words that you're not as familiar with and don't use as frequently, they'll be a little bit more novel, might be a little bit harder to spell, but you can at least get close enough that now you can actually get help from spell check. Whereas before, spell check would be like, yeah, mate, I have no idea what to spell.
Is this German?
Yeah. And some adults with dyslexia tell me, look, I couldn't spell one word. So why do people think it's helpful to me to give me a list of 10 other words? And I don't know if this one's right. And I'm supposed to look at these 10 and figure out which one of them are right. I couldn't even tell if this one was right. So for some folks who have more severe spelling struggles, spell check is not helpful because their approximation is so far off. Spell check has no idea what they're trying to spell.
No, I absolutely agree with you. And I actually, that is a perfect example because my spell check was the same exact way. Before I would write in my spell check and it wouldn't even understand to give me the correct answer. Now
Yes.
it's completely different. Now it will prompt you immediately. Now it knows exactly what you want because you're actually putting in the right words to start off with.
Or at least it's phonetic. Like you might put YOT, which could actually say yacht, and the
Yeah,
spell check is like, I think you mean this one. And it'll put
yeah.
the YACHT because it knows phonetically what you were trying to spell. And so it can help some. So
And
yeah.
honestly, spell check is, I'm sure it's helping a lot of kids with dyslexia now because, I mean, we didn't really have it when I was very young. We
Right.
only got it when I was much older, so it wasn't something that I would have benefited from.
Right. And that brings up an interesting point of, okay, what's our goal? Is our goal to give kids or teens or even adults with dyslexia tools like assistive technology? Like there's a pen you can drag across a page and it will tell you what the words say. But that doesn't do you very good when you're driving down the road and you got to look at a street sign because you can't strike the pen on the street sign. So assistive technology is a crutch, but it doesn't fully empower the person like let's just change the reading skills. So the approach we took with you was not crutches, not accommodations, not expect less from you. It's actually take the weaker skills that we'd identify with testing and then make the weaker skills stronger, build the reading skills, strengthen the spelling skills, strengthen the comprehension skills. Tell me about classes at university. What was hard? What was easy? Like the hardest class, the easiest class that you can recall. And let's try to understand how your skills went with the harder class versus how your skills went with the easier class.
Do we want to talk about the last set of university or you want to talk about prior to Morris Center?
Let's do a comparison. Let's do prior to Morris Center. What was hard? What was easy about university? One piece you said was the comprehension. You just weren't taking in the information.
Yeah, I mean, that was majority of it. When it came to the Wagner University in New York, it was definitely just comprehension. And then at one point, I just kind of gave up. It was just not really understanding. I mean, it probably had a lot to do with the American culture too, because I wasn't very involved in the American culture from a young age. I was in England from 13. So I was very UK based. So for me, it was definitely comprehension there. By the time I reached the Regent's University in London, I wouldn't say anything was really struggling. The only thing I would say was struggling to me was probably my tech classes, if I have to say anything. After I finished the Morris Center, once I could put in the time and effort and actually do the work, do the homework, do the research, everything seemed pretty simple to me too, because I learned to relate everything to my businesses back home. So everything had an example for me or something to look back to kind of base it on. But definitely when it came to maybe, let's just say, finally using Excel or creating using project management, Microsoft app, those kind of things, that would have been very difficult for me. I've never been very tech savvy, but other than that, after the Morris Center, it was, I wouldn't say simple, but it felt pretty simple to me after that. I felt that university was not hard for me to complete.
Or at least it was doable. It wasn't an
Yeah.
impossible task
No,
because
absolutely not.
I remember talking to you in 2015, and the reason why you first did lessons with me is because I'm the PhD brain scientist. I might be able to convince this teen or this young 18 to 20-year-old that we might have some expertise to change skills that he hasn't changed yet. And so I jumped on the sessions first to explain to you the science behind what we're doing, all the research done, the millions of dollars of studies and the analysis plus the medical team, and really then helping you understand that we might know more. Just give us a chance. See if we really could actually possibly do more than you've done in the past. And that, like, give me a 30% chance we might know what we're talking about. We got you on board, we got you started, and then it's as the skills build, then we know confidence, your belief in yourself, your belief comes from one thing. It's your competence. As your skill gets stronger, your confidence gets stronger. Just like you said, you began to ask your teachers questions because you knew the content. You knew it was a good question. It was a reasonable question. And it was one you wanted to get the answer to because it was going to help you understand the material that you're trying to learn for school. So I think that's an important piece as we put this all together. How about what possessed you to go out to grad school and get an MBA degree?
Before I actually finished my undergrad, I came back to Trinidad. COVID had come around, and everything kind of got pushed online. We went to all online classes.
Yeah.
So when I came back home, I had a lot of time available on my hands. I was actually doing I'm just trying to put it back together, all the little pieces. I was actually doing my thesis,
Okay.
right, for my undergrad. And we had a business, a convenience store business, and it wasn't performing too well. And what I did was I created a scenario where I reformed the business into a convenient grocery store, something that I wanted to do for a little while from living in the UK and seeing how the stores transformed into smaller convenient grocery stores. So during COVID, I actually launched that business, right? So right before I finished my undergrad, I launched that business. And then I went back to university and I turned in my thesis. And what really made me want to do it was when I gave him my thesis, my teacher looked at me and he said, "This would never work."
Oh.
And I looked at him and I gave him a P&L. And I said, "Yeah, well, it's already working."
Nice.
And that's when I was like, okay, well, I want to go and do my master's now because I actually now know that I know what I'm doing.
Good.
I want to take it even further. I want to really take my business skills to the next level.
Which is a fantastic example of you chose what to pursue. It wasn't saying, okay, I don't spell well, I don't comprehend well, my reading's not so great. What career could I do? It was reading wasn't an issue. Spelling's okay, good enough now. I'm comprehending better now. If I choose to do the MBA, I can do it. And that's what is a whole different world from dyslexia versus kids who've never struggled. Kids who've never struggled never understand that they don't really have a limit of opportunities. It's just based on what they can get access to. But skill-wise, they have the skills to pursue most anything. A child or a teen or even an adult in their 40s. We've worked with adults who are architects who would pass up the promotion. Every year they'd pass up the promotion. They had earned the promotion, but they would say, no, I don't want that promotion. I really like my position. I want to stay here. And then they would go home and feel sad about it. And you might ask, why would somebody pass up a promotion? Well, when you have a dyslexia, you don't spell well, don't read well, and your promotion means you're now going to be in a higher position that requires you to write memos and send memos to the whole, business, or you're required to give up and give talks. And you can't trust that you're going to read the report that somebody hands you. You don't want to put yourself in a position that's going to make you less skilled or less intelligent. And so then you start navigating your world based on what you think you can do, not what you want to do. And in that example, that woman desperately wanted to accept the promotion because she earned it and she wanted the higher wage, but she knew she couldn't do it with her reading skills and spelling skills being so low. So Jean-Luc, in her 40s, she came and worked with a team like the Morris Center and rebuilt her skills and strengthened her skills. And even at age 40, it wasn't too late to go back now and the next year take the promotion because she could do the reading. She could do the spelling. So it's a fantastic example to hear that you chose to go to the MBA program because, one, you probably want to prove the professor wrong, and you already had with your profit and loss statement you handed him. The business is already working. He didn't believe it, but you're like, no, I've got some knowledge of business, and it's already happening. And then you go on and get the graduate degree, which means you now know more, which means you can potentially make better decisions, build even better models, and advance business.
Absolutely.
So how about today, your role in innovation and business development? One, is it hindered or held back by spelling, reading, or comprehension? Do those interfere with your ability to do your job in innovation and business development?
Absolutely not. When it comes to, let's just say, Presto, so I am the director of new business development for the whole group, which will be the Agastinis and Prestige Holdings group. Yes. As well as I'm the director of Presto, which is the convenient grocery store we were talking about before.
Right.
When it comes to Presto, absolutely not. It's a lot of using my imagination and innovation skills to create products, look for new store locations. In any of it, no, I don't. I'm never held back by spelling, reading, writing, or anything. No, I wouldn't say anything holds me back because majority of the time, even if I'm writing a report about something or I'm creating a PowerPoint about something, I very much understand what I'm writing about. Do I know what I'm writing about? Because it's more or less something I would have created or something that I've done so much research into that I know exactly what I'm talking about. I have all the facts and figures. So no, nothing stops me. Honestly, now it only makes it easier and better.
Which, Jean-Luc, I don't know if you know how profound a statement that is, because I've been doing this work for 39 years. So at age 19, I began my work in dyslexia, learning disabilities, because Patricia Conway Lindemood was world famous for her work in dyslexia. So I don't know if you knew this when we worked together, but I'm dyslexic. But I got prevention at age 5. So at age 5, I did the same program you did when you're in your teens and 20s to rebuild my phonological skills, rebuild the reading spelling skills. But I got it as prevention to make sure the gap didn't happen. But the thing that happens for most adults, and we've seen 20, 40, 50, 60-year-olds, is they've come to believe the skills can't be changed. And there's a group of people who are out there telling other adults dyslexia is lifelong, it never gets better, no program ever works. And what they don't understand is they're really just speaking from personal experience, because that's not what the science says. We have published research, even as complicated as something that I've not told you about. It's called phonological alexia. Phonological alexia is actually the same as dyslexia, but it's not genetic. You didn't get it from your mom and dad. You get phonological alexia, which means poor reading problems, and sometimes you get a phonological agraphia, which is spelling problems, and there may be a comprehension piece, but you get that after you've had a brain injury called a stroke. And the stroke has caused part of the left brain tissue to die, and you actually lose some of the reading skills you used to have. Right. So I spent 10 years as a brain scientist publishing research how to rebuild reading skills and spelling skills after physical brain damage. Right. We're about 70% successful making what we call functional changes. It's a noticeable improvement in reading skills. It's a noticeable improvement in spelling and speaking skills. So we know the human brain has the capacity to make changes, but there's one thing that limits it. It's what we call in science, we call it experience-dependent plasticity. Let me explain that in this way. If nobody speaks to you in German, and nobody shows you German spellings and German books, and nobody tells you how to write in German, you're probably not going to ever learn German because you've had no experience with it. If nobody gives you the proper experiences to build that phonological system, be able to hold on to words, split words apart, and judge 5 changes. Did you add sounds, take away, substitute, shift, or repeat sounds, and then use those skills to be better at sounding out words for reading, better for sounding out words for spelling. You don't get that proper experience and that bottom-up speech processing to reading skills later approach, then you can't expect your brain to have those skills. But most adults who've not had the experience you've had have come to believe that nothing I've done ever changed my reading skills, so my brain is different. It cannot learn to read. But that's not science. And your experience helps really, it's just such a profound statement for you to say, spelling doesn't hold me back. Reading doesn't hold me back. Comprehension does not interfere with my ability to do my job, which is why you have a high-level job, because you can do it. So it's fantastic to hear that.
And even when you ask the questions, I know you may look at my face and I may look lost when you're asking, but it's like, okay, I'm trying to find the examples to give you where I still see dyslexia or dyscalculia being an issue in my life, but I can't find. I really felt after the Morris Center that those learning disabilities that were an issue for me, they had passed and I left them behind at the Morris Center.
Yes. The skills are stronger, the skills are better. And what we know from Morris Center in Trinidad or in Ponte Vedra Beach, Florida, or in Ocala, Florida, and even the online company, nowprograms.com, they have 4 programs the online company uses, that Morris Center uses, but Morris Center also has the experts in occupational therapy and things like how well can we actually change your spelling skills. And so someone had asked, well, how do I get my child to spell better? What can I do about that? And usually if spelling is still struggling, it's actually a visual perceptual, visual memory, visual motor difficulty that can only be changed by occupational therapists who are trained in sensory integration. Do you remember spending any time in the OT gym at Morris Center? It's kind of a little crazy.
Yes, I remember being in the OT center. To me, I didn't understand, and I actually kind of don't still understand what the OT center was for.
Right.
And I would love for you to explain more to me, because I've actually been asked about it and I actually hadn't had a proper explanation for it.
Absolutely. Let me show you a slide here, and we'll add this one in. And it's this slide right here. This is the OT developmental pyramid. Down at the bottom of this slide is all the core 8 sensory inputs. And I jokingly tell people, your science teacher in lower grades did not tell you the truth. There are not 5 senses. There's actually 8. But most science teachers don't know all 8 senses. The OTs know all 8 senses. And they down here at the bottom of that pyramid in the red and the orange zone. When you build those 8 senses of touch, smell, taste, feeling, hearing, and then proprioception is your awareness of your body in space. So it's how you can close your eyes and get your finger to land right in your nose, that you can feel the pull on the joints of the arm and you know where it is in space. Individuals, whether you're a child or adult, who have poor proprioception are more likely to knock things over on the dinner table. The glass of milk gets knocked over on the dinner table, 2 nights a week. They're more likely to bump into furniture that hasn't moved in 10 years, but they misjudge where their body is in space. And so it's a sensory system that really is important to build, because it also affects your imagery skills, because it can actually help you have better ability to image and visualize. And then there's also interoception. Interoception is your awareness of your energy level, of your hunger level, toileting, sleep needs, your mood. And the better you understand yourself, the better you can decide, hey, I need to get up and move for a minute. I'm getting a little sleepy and I'm not taking in the information, quite as easily. Or, hey, I'm going to take a quick break. I'm going to go get a drink of water. I'm going to come back. And that then helps you have better ability to focus and learn and get those skills going well. So there's those 8 sensory systems that actually first build your attention, regulation, and modulation skills. And then with each color of this graph are more complex skills until you get to the top. And at the very top, those are the really functional skills. Those are the skills where it's what we're doing the most. And it's the school skills, the socializing skills, all these different skills together at the very top. But the last block at the very top, Jean-Luc, it says joie de vivre. And joie de vivre is French for joy of life. Because when you have all those skills and those skills are working well, then you can adapt yourself to the environment as you need to. The spelling part of spelling, meaning the motor movement, the visual motor skill, is not a challenge. The visual memory part of learning graphs on a chapter of an economics textbook, or remembering a photo you saw in a science textbook, those have been enhanced by the OT skills training and development. So they're also building brain processing systems, just like the other programs are building the brain processing for sounding out words, or the brain processing for making movies. It's how you build those skills and strengthen them together. And when the OT is done really well, you're right. Most students have no idea what they're doing, but they know it's kind of fun. It's a challenge. It's an obstacle course, and they'll take it on and they'll do it. But the OTs typically go to school for at least 6 years, 2 years, 4 years in undergrad and 2 years in grad school, to have just a basic foundation of knowledge of how that pyramid needs to be assessed, how those pyramid skills need to be worked on, and how to strengthen those skills over time.
No, you're absolutely correct. It was definitely the most fun part of the day.
And they build the skills and help you put the pieces together. So knowing that you don't struggle so much anymore, which to some viewers watching this, well, that's nonsense. They sell in snake oil. Dyslexia is lifelong. It begins to make people challenge their perceptions. Why do you think it's lifelong? Why do you think it can't be changed? Because we have scientific studies that show it can be changed. We have studies that show we can change it after brain damage. We have Jean-Luc saying, I don't struggle to read anymore. I don't struggle to comprehend. Spelling, I go check the bigger words that I don't use so much, but the words I use daily, I don't have to check quite so much. Spelling is stronger. And math. It's good that you bring that up, because many people talk about dyscalculia, but they don't understand that in the developmental hierarchy of the brain, we've got the reading and spelling skills down here. You've got then the writing skills coming up here for written composition. And we tell people, not as a joke, but just to really get them to think about it, we then have to teach a foreign language. After you can read and spell well and comprehend, and after you can write essays and write papers, you now are ready to learn a foreign language. And it's called math. Math is a foreign language. It has its own vocabulary, just like German does. No, numerator, denominator, decimal means nothing except for mathematics. So you have to use your phonological skills to store and remember all these new vocabulary words. You have to use your imagery skills to understand the concepts like geometry, of volume, of area, of space, how to calculate the radius. Those are conceptual imagery-based parts of math as well. When you get into writing, you're learning formula. There's a topic sentence, and there's 3 detailed sentences. Then there's a concluding sentence. You're getting into procedural operations, order of doing things. And then all those skills together now can be used to train and strengthen your math skills. And that's what we did at the Moore Center there in Trinidad. We built these lower level skills first, then we went to math skills. Some people go straight to math skills, and they're trying to train math skills, but we call that putting cart before the horse. It's not the right order. Those skills are up here, and there's still struggles down here. If you don't change the foundational skills first, it's harder to train the higher level skills.
Absolutely. It goes hand in hand. You need to have both of them. Yeah, you need the reading and the writing and the comprehension in order to understand what's going on the math side. Because as you said, you have a whole set of words inside of there that are just based around math.
Yes.
And yeah, if you don't understand them properly, I mean, if you just don't understand words in general, it's going to be very hard for you to understand that when it's related to math and you're already struggling with math.
Exactly. So in your current life today, where you're at today, what would you tell some other 15-year-old, 20-year-old, 30-year-old who's still struggling to read, still struggling to spell? Maybe they comprehend fine, that's not a problem, but they can't get it from books, so they only have to do video, or they only have to do books on tape because they can't read the books. What's your advice for them about, can the skills be changed, yes or no?
I'm going to sound like a lot of older people I know who would have told me when I was younger, take my stupid advice and do as I'm saying now and go and do the Morris Center, do what you can, go on the Now program, whatever help you can get, especially from Tim and his team, I would say absolutely do it. It's not going to seem beneficial to you at a young age, but once you reach to your 20s, into your late 30s, you're going to realize how beneficial it really was. And all I have to say is just push through it. Don't take it for granted. Don't not want to go because you're seeing younger kids there. Just admit that there's something there. You understand that you have something not necessarily wrong with you, because I wouldn't say it's something wrong with you. You have a learning disabilities that others don't have. One thing it will do, it will teach you to work 10 times harder than everybody else, because you're going to have to push harder in all your classes in order to just try and be on the same level as everybody else. But the benefit of that is when you do get to the same level, you have a different work ethic and a different mentality to much other people, because you now know how hard it is to work hard to get to the next level when it's been very easy for everybody else.
Right.
So you actually might be a little bit more beneficial than you think.
Absolutely. And you have some supporters online with us. Nicole tells you she's really proud of you, Jean-Luc, because you're out there telling people, here's what's possible. Here's what can be done. And you did it. That's what I have to tell teens as well at your age, to say, look, we cannot change your brain, but we can help you do it. We have the programs, we have the skills, you have the expertise, but you actually have to do the work. And you did it. You put in the effort, you put in the time, you worked with the team. Doesn't mean you're real happy about it at first. We'll be very honest about that. But over time, we got past the one, disbelief that it really was going to be changed. 2, that it doesn't mean you're less than, that we're changing these skills. Doesn't mean you're less intelligent either. Just means you've not had the right instruction to change the brain skills. If nobody has taught you German, why would you think you can teach and speak German? If you don't have the proper training, if you don't have the proper experiences, the brain doesn't build the skills. And some of these skills require very explicit training, very explicit practice. And I'll tell families too, some families can't afford to come to Morris Center, or they can't afford to come to nowprograms.com. And we'll say, yeah, but here are things you can do without us that are still important. One, if you want to try to change comprehension, start talking to your child, or start doing for yourself, thinking about what movie you're picturing while you're listening to a book on tape, or while you're listening to a book on CD, or even while you're reading a book. Stop and think about, what do I picture for that? What do I see for that? Try to visibly make the movie of what the story is saying. Because the more you practice the movie making skills, the stronger it gets. And this is why some adults say, and they're partially correct, they'll say all dyslexics have superpowers and there's 5 of them. Well, that's actually not true scientifically. Every dyslexic doesn't have 5 superpowers. We wish, but it's not true at all. But we know that if you work on the skills and you practice the skills, you can make skills stronger. So if as a dyslexic person, you spend a lot of time listening in class and visualizing what the teacher is talking about, you kept practicing movie making skills. So you built them, you made them stronger. And you're right, today in your life, you might be better than your peers at creative thinking, at visualizing, but you're better not because genetically you were pre-wired for it. You're better because you built it, you practiced it. That's that neuroscience concept of experience-dependent plasticity. Plasticity means the learning and the wiring. It doesn't change without the experience. So you got to put those together. So we tell folks, work on imagery, talk to your kids about movie making, talk to yourself about what do I picture, listen to audiobooks and think about the movie. And the more you practice that, even without any help from us as experts in these fields, you can still make those skills stronger. The reading piece, it's harder to change by yourself. The reading piece is really complicated. It takes a very specialized program. And in healthcare, a physician cannot give you a medicine unless it's been scientifically tested and proven to be effective and safe. Unfortunately, that doesn't work in reading programs. There's no requirement that a reading program be tested and proven to be successful. So unfortunately, mom and dad, auntie, grandpa, and grandma who are raising a child, they are inundated with programs and everyone thinks their program is going to work. That's why they do it. And most programs make small progress. They make some progress, but it doesn't close the gap and get the reading problems to go away. So we encourage parents, look at the science behind the program you're choosing and make sure you're looking for the same caliber of science that your pediatrician uses in picking medicines, because that actually exists in dyslexia. It's what we call randomized controlled trials. It's real high-powered research studies. And you probably don't even know this, Jean-Luc, but the Moore Center did 3 5-year randomized controlled trials, big $1 million research studies. And those studies then really helped us know how to build this program, how to make sure it worked, because we tested it. We compared it to other programs. So, and then that makes you have the benefit of building the skills together. So what's going to happen next? Where are things going in the future? And I'll tell you one thing to watch out for. You can thank your mom and dad for this because it's genetic. So when you have kids, guess what's likely to happen?
Somebody's going to have dyslexia.
Very likely. Yeah. And you just blame mom and dad and they can blame grandma and grandpa. It's the family tree. Just like my son blames me for his dyslexia and I can blame my father. It's how it goes. So you're at higher risk for having children with dyslexia. If you marry a girl who also has dyslexia in the family, it's 80% more likely you'll have at least one child with dyslexia.
So it's not like positives and negatives.
It's just genetics. It's that,
So two people with dyslexia don't make a kid not have dyslexia.
No. It's just, and there's not a problem with having it because now we know what to do about it. Good news is we know how to intervene at age 4 and 5. We can change the skills then before they even fall behind. That's the power of real brain science, is we've built better programs with the Moore Center or nowprograms.com, and we can get them to kids, and we have schools that contract with us. So then the parents get it for free. We actually have schools in Trinidad. Jean-Luc, we in 21 classrooms in Trinidad, empowering kids in those classrooms, and the children are in infant 1. They're young.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
Fantastic. Yes.
That's amazing.
Did you know you got a famous dyslexic in Trinidad who went online after you went online? Yeah, you went online before he did. He's a famous older man. He's in his 60s, and he talks about his dyslexia even on his Thursday night TV show. You know who that is?
No, who's that?
It's your Archbishop.
Oh, the Archbishop.
The Archbishop?
Your Grace. Archbishop. I did not know that.
Yeah, Jason Gordon, Archbishop, His Grace. He is dyslexic. He can't sound out words. And so he challenged us to figure out how could we help more kids. We said, well, we have to help you first. So in his 60s, he went online in Trinidad, and we rebuilt his reading and spelling skills as a 60-year-old. And that was the way he could show. And so he helps us with some of these projects to get more services with kids in schools, because we want the services to happen at age 4 and 5, and then you prevent the dyslexia trouble. And yeah, Sparkle says that she has dyslexia. She's been trying to get through, she got through her nursing degree. She did not get through her nursing degree because of dyslexia and wants to give up. But Sparkle, there's a way to help you. There's a way to build the skills. Contact Moore Center in Trinidad. Contact nowprograms.com. We'll figure out a way to get you the help. And there's lots of ways to get this kind of help. And there's not an age when it's too late. You got to be able to build skills.
Absolutely. And Tim, one last piece of advice I'll give to parents out there is if your kids are struggling with learning disabilities, don't think the answer is to just give them medication straight away.
Right.
Because that is not the answer. Because I'm speaking from personal experience, because I was given concert at a young age. And for me, it did more negative than positive.
Right.
So I would say programs like this are 10 times more beneficial than just jumping to medication one time.
True, because we know medicines don't change reading skills. We know ADHD doesn't cause dyslexia. You might make attention mistakes in reading, but that's actually not a reading error. That's an attention focus problem. And there's other ways to work on that. And OT, like the OT gym, that actually changes focus skills. OT can actually change how well you stay in the focus zone, how well you stay focused where you're supposed to stay focused. And let me say one thing about ADHD. It's improperly named. It's not an attention problem. Every child, every adult, every teen with ADHD has plenty of attention, but the problem is where are they putting it? Because if Miss is here talking and teaching the class and they get distracted by something here, they're still attending, but they're attending over here and they're no longer attending here. So their focus has lost, not their attention. The attention just went to the wrong focus. So understanding why OT helps change that, it helps change your awareness of where your focus is and how to maintain the focus, to maintain attention, to help build those skills. So I think it's good advice. And I think the number one piece I'll add to that is ask the professionals for more information. Learn as much as you can about ADHD. Learn as much as you can about what really is dyslexia from the scientists, not from people who have opinions, because opinions will be misleading you all the time. But the scientists are the ones who know the most, especially the brain scientists, the neuropsychologists, the speech therapists are brain scientists. They really understand the brain's function and how that leads to three things that actually are diagnosing for dyslexia: either poor reading accuracy, or poor reading speed, or poor reading comprehension. Those are the only three criteria to diagnose dyslexia. It has nothing to do with flipping words around, flipping letters around. That's not a cause of dyslexia. That's a symptom that you might likely to see happen because they guessing at words. They're not able to sound them out.
So Jean-Luc, as you said, you have to get the information because people just bundle it all together, and you may have different learning disabilities, but you're labeled as having ADHD or dyslexia or whatever it may be. So it gets all bundled.
Absolutely, 100%. And then when it's all bundled up, it's harder to get accurate information.
Absolutely.
My friend, I have to thank you for your time. 50 minutes goes by really quick.
Thank you for having me on, Tim. I appreciate it.
My pleasure. Great to see your success. Great to know that you're not struggling to read. You're not struggling to comprehend. Spelling's not a challenge for the common daily stuff, just the new stuff. And you are charting your course for your goals and your joys and your dreams, Jean-Luc. And that's what we want for every individual. Whether you're a child or you're 50 years old, it's not too late to change those skills. So blessings, my friend. We'll see you again soon in Trinidad. And thank you again for joining us on Dyslexia Success Stories.
Thank you, Tim.
All right. Take care, everyone.